All right, welcome back to the show, The Future Now. This is Dr. Manny and Menike here with Dr. Sai and with John. And last episode, we were talking about aging as it relates to nutrition and the plant based diet. And we were going over what not to eat before we get to what you should eat. So we're going to continue the conversation. Sai? Dr. Sai?
Yes. One of the fundamental basic principle of aging is the idea that nutrition and aging are intertwined
Right.
and linked. On one hand,
You
if
are
we don't,
what you eat.
yeah, if we don't eat, we die, and if we eat, we age. So we have to have a balance in perspective. Now, of course, in mice and animals, it's possible to reduce their calorie intake. And it has been shown repeatedly in many, many different organisms that if you reduce the calorie intake, you increase the lifespan. For example, if you increase the intake of mice by 65%, you increase their lifespan by almost 50%. So instead of 2 years, they live 4 years.
That's a great
For
return
us,
on investment.
Yes.
for us,
Yeah.
it would be instead of living 80 years, 160 years, that's a pretty good.
That's a
But
pretty
most people cannot live on a 65% reduction in their food intake. It is real starvation.
Because
So-
people live to eat, they don't eat
Yeah.
to live.
Yes.
Right.
So I don't think that people would start to starve themselves. Perhaps then there will be another scenario where you don't starve yourself. Instead, on a weekend, for example, or maybe during the week, when you're busy, you eat nothing during breakfast, lunch, or perhaps a very, very
So
small.
you're saying a day of fast.
A day of fasting.
Okay.
In fact, this is part of the Jewish tradition and
Yeah.
Muslim religion. In Muslim religion,
they
there's a
do it
month of
too.
Ramadan
Right.
Yeah.
where they don't. They eat at 5 o'clock in the morning, and they don't eat anything during the
Right.
day until evening. In Jewish tradition, Yom Kippur, you don't eat from 6 o'clock sundown to sundown. So it is built into the religion.
Yeah.
But I think we have to build it into perhaps our weekly rigor to increase our lifespan.
More and more people in current society now are adhering to this intermittent fasting protocol
Yeah.
where you wake up and you don't eat until around 2 or 3 in the afternoon.
Right.
And for the next 8 hours, you can pretty much eat anything you want. And then you go to sleep. And when you wake up, you again fast.
You remember, this goes against what we heard as a child.
Right.
They said breakfast is the most important
Right.
food of the
Right.
day. But in fact, if you escape it, you're actually helping yourself. In fact, I remember that my mother used to tell me, don't drink water while you're eating. And I said, why? She says, it gives you indigestion. But I know that is not true. The more and faster you fill your stomach, you feel that you're not hungry is better, because eating less is equivalent to longer lifespan.
You should actually drink water, a glass of water
Absolutely,
prior
absolutely.
to starting your meal
Yeah.
so that you distend your stomach
Yes.
and you feel full earlier.
Oh, okay.
One of the things I like the most is the French style of eating, because it takes them a long time to eat. Because it takes 20 minutes from what the food has entered your stomach to give the message to your brain that you had enough. So the longer you take, you give the possibility of these
Signals.
food signals
Eat
to
slow.
reach to your brain.
Eat slow.
And then it is slow. So take your time. Take first eat salad as much as you want, and then a glass of red wine, resveratrol, right? So then French do it right.
How big is the class allowed to be?
They say it depends on your age. When you reach 50, maybe a cup, maybe 60, maybe 2 cups, and of course you can't keep going because
Right,
then eventually you become
because,
drunk,
yeah.
right? But the French do it correctly. That is the lesson we learn from French. We are going to go to Italy and say, what do they do that is so right scientifically?
That's right.
In a minute. So I think fasting is really has been shown in any organism. It
Even in
extends
mice,
lifespan,
yeah,
even mice.
with
In
caloric
yeah, so
restriction, right? But it's the way to do it safely,
yeah, to do it
right?
safely, you can do it maybe once a week or twice a week, depending on how stamina you have. Maybe you can escape breakfast or lunch,
Right.
and fill yourself with vegetable. Vegetables don't have that much calorie. For example, 100 gram of pizza, gives you, I think, about 150 calories, something like that. But 100 gram of lettuce will
Vegetable,
give
right?
you a few calories,
Right, right.
but yet fills you, so you don't feel
Oh,
that
yeah,
hungry.
the feeling of fullness is a physical
Exactly,
condition. If you
exactly.
distend the stomach, that's why nowadays there's a movement to use a balloon. A
Balloon,
balloon,
yeah,
right? If you just distend the upper part of the stomach, it
exactly.
sends that signal
You
of
eat
fullness
less.
to the brain. So
Exactly.
any way you can distend the stomach, either by water or by fiber, which is not digestible, putting something in there is the way to go. As you
So,
said,
Exactly.
so also you go back to fasting. If you're fasting, you can't eat nothing. I mean, would you drink water? Would there be what is the
No,
a
I would
fast?
I would not recommend total fasting. I would recommend eating vegetables.
Okay,
Okay,
raw
raw
vegetables.
yeah,
vegetables.
celery.
Okay,
Celery is
bag of
good.
carrots.
Celery is actually the only, I'd say, calorie negative food there is. In other words, you burn more calories chewing it than what you imbibe from it.
Okay,
Right, so it's a good food for fasting, and as you said, water
yeah,
and bitter herbs and vegetables.
And you
Right.
can make your vegetables taste great. You don't have to add salt. I would recommend that you put lemon juice, some vinegar,
Cayenne peppers.
olive oil,
Yeah.
pepper.
cayenne pepper,
Right.
and then there are tons of other types of seasoning depending whether you're from Italy or France or America. There are many, many seasoning, especially Indians have a
Yeah. I
ton of
love
seasoning.
Indian
They're
food.
beautiful. And
Turmeric.
turmeric is wonderful, it's
Yeah.
an
Yeah.
antioxidant. And these things make your food delicious, so you want to eat.
Right, and that's the big thing is because here we're uh, all about taste.
Right.
So that's why a burger they bury it with pepper or excuse me with salt, and so if your vegetables have that same flavor, not that same flavor, but a good flavor, you're more apt to start eating more
Right.
vegetables, knowing the recipe to do that. And some obviously cultures and restaurants have captured that. So you go to a Moroccan restaurant, you go to an Indian restaurant, something that's in some of the Asian restaurants as well. A lot of fresh fruits, vegetables, but they make it taste good.
But again, back to what he said earlier, as long as the seasoning doesn't include salt in any form.
Right.
Because people oftentimes use salt as a method of preparation, especially with
Exactly.
meats and stuff,
Exactly.
to make it tastier.
Right. Right.
One of the most important thing that fiber does is helps what is rampant in the United States, constipation. Constipation is horrible. It is an indication that you're not taking enough fibers.
Right.
And so if you're constipated, you're not eating fibers and you're actually damaging your microbiome. You're depriving yourself from the good mood producing products that comes out of the microbiome. I would not recommend milk, but I would recommend yogurt because it has lactobacillus,
It's being fermented.
which is
yeah.
really fermenting
Right.
and producing lactic acid. Lactic acid, in fact, is a natural defense mechanism. For example, in the vagina, there is Lactobacillus
Lactobacillus,
haemophilus,
right.
which is really making acidic. The vaginal environment is acidic, and it protects you against
Bacteria,
organisms.
right.
So, I believe that if you're having constipation, the first thing you have to do is to introduce sufficient fiber per day in your diet. Now, if you cook vegetables, it's still okay because the cellulose is still cellulose. It remains. So, if you want to prefer not eat raw
you
vegetables,
Or
you can
slightly
cook it.
steamed because
Yeah,
obviously the more
saute.
the more
Yeah.
you cook it, the more
Exactly.
nutrients are
You lose.
cooked out of it.
Right.
Exactly. You talked about sauteing. I would recommend there is an air fryer
Right. I've seen those.
Those
Those
are
are amazing.
beautiful.
They're
Beautiful.
amazing.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So you just rub a little bit of oil on the top of it and put it in those things, and it's really
Really
delicious.
good, yes.
You put a little bit of your seasoning mix. I usually mix seasoning.
Right.
I put 10 different seasoning in my mix, and I just added like salt to the top of the vegetables.
Right.
And I think you still get the fibers. Now, in case you really can't overcome your constipation, you really have to cut the meat, and you
Right.
cut the things that it's indigestible products
Right.
give you volumes that eventually dry out, and it gives you constipation. So by following these things, you really have to get 60% of Americans have constipation, and that's a high
Wow,
number.
That's a high number.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
No
you talked
wonder why
about
they're so uptight.
alkaline.
The alkaline diet has caught a lot of attention, and it's the topic of conversation in a lot of places now. It's based on the premise that if you keep your internal environment alkaline versus acidic, that it's actually pro health, and it increases longevity, it decreases tumorigenesis and other diseases, cardiovascular diseases, and otherwise.
Yeah.
It's based on the concept that if you eat a food, there's something called the potential renal acid load on the kidney, PRAL. Potential renal acid load is what your kidneys would break down the end products of the food into, whether it be acidic in the case of animal meats and proteins, which tend to be more acidic, or basic alkaline, as with cruciferous vegetables like kale, which have a larger potential renal acid load index. Now, that index varies from food to food. Some greens are low in the potential renal acid load index, like a -2 or -4, such as tomatoes and berries. And others are high, such as -44, as with kale, as with cauliflower, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, and broccoli, things like that. Right. But the thinking seems to be like being on a plant-based diet doesn't mean you'll never eat a piece of meat again. If you were to use this index, it means like if you have a slice of meat and on the same plate, you now have to add a lot of kale, a lot of Brussels sprouts to end up with a product that is overall alkaline in nature. Your thoughts on that?
This is a myth that is produced by the idea that cancer cells make their environment acidic.
Yes.
And by virtue of making it acidic, it causes neighboring cells to die. However, we never had access to that site. There are reasons for this. One, let's assume you drink alkaline water
Right.
that is now everywhere. The pH of a stomach is 2. It produces so much hydrochloric acid.
Hydrochloric acid. Right.
Immediately after you drink any alkaline water, it's neutralized.
It's acidified, so to
Yeah.
speak.
So not only it's neutralized, it's still the stomach has to maintain that pH,
Right.
because it knows it's a built-in system that unless it is 2, it's not going to be able to digest any food. So it prevents it from happening. Number 2, as soon as you go to intestinal tract in duodenum, the first part
The first part of the small
intestinal
intestine,
tract,
right.
the bile itself is alkaline.
Right.
Naturally alkaline,
Right.
and that's how our blood, our food is digested. But this alkalinity never ever changes the pH of blood. Why? It's against life.
Because of the kidneys,
Life
right.
only works in very specific pH. The pH that all our cells work is 7.4, slightly above neutral. The pH ranges from 0 to 14, 7 being neutral in the middle. Anything below 7 is acidic.
Is acidic,
Anything
right.
above 7
Well,
is
7.2, yeah.
alkaline. So we are slightly alkaline blood. You can never change it. If you do manage to change it, a lot of things happens. Now, first, why can we change it? Number 1, we have a buffering system in our blood, ton of it. It's called phosphate system,
Right.
phosphate buffering system. So if you bring acid into it, neutralizes. If you bring alkaline into it, neutralizes. To maintain that pH is a built-in system in our blood. And we have 5 liters of blood, so you have to have a tremendous amount of alkalinity. You actually infuse alkaline into your blood, and it still is pushing against it.
So
Bicarb.
the alkaline
Bicarb.
waters
Doesn't do anything.
doesn't do
Doesn't.
but anything, it could be even detrimental. Is that what you're saying?
No, it does
No, it
something.
doesn't do any-
It does something. It makes people who make the claim richer. That's all. It
But
doesn't do anything.
Well, it also does something to the people who believe that it works and they drink more
Or maybe
water.
a placebo effect.
Yes,
I don't
they drink more water.
There you go.
Yeah,
Yes. And drinking
that
more water
perspective.
obviously is a good
It's
thing.
Obviously, it's a good thing.
Yeah, yes.
And
I would
eating more-
recommend drinking 10 glasses of water a day.
Right.
That's a ton of water. That's
Yeah.
almost one every hour
Yeah.
during your
Yeah.
day. But the more water you drink, the better it is for your body because it gets rid of the toxic substances through the kidney.
Right.
However, going back to the idea of the phosphate buffer system, that's just one. There are 2 more.
Right.
Our respiration is linked to the buffering
The
ability and
acid-base,
capability
yeah, acid-base
of
balance.
the blood. If you make the blood to be acidic, the CO2 is acidic, then you start to breathe faster,
You hyperventilate.
right? So, and if you make it more alkaline, you start to
breathe
not
slower.
slower breathing, which then bring it back to the pH 7.4 anyway, right? And this happens in a very short time. Number 3, anything that is in your blood that has changed its alkalinity, it's going to be excreted by the kidney very quickly. Number 4, when you eat vegetables, it makes your urine to be alkaline because the body is actually counteracting those things. And in fact, the phytic acid, unfortunately, in vegetables sometimes gives rise to kidney stones. So if you eat leafy vegetables, I would highly recommend you drink a lot of water because you want to dilute those substances in yours. So the entire idea to change the environment, especially in the interstitium, which is outside the blood, not only the blood has to become alkaline according to them, but also this alkalinity has to go into interstitium between the tissues.
Right.
So then it counteracts the acidity that a cancer cell might produce. But we can never get there. This alkalinity will never get to the surrounding, the cancer cells to really be effective. So it's a myth, and it's not going to be foundation on the real science.
However, you just mentioned, though, that after you eat vegetables, you do alkalinize your own
Yes, urine, yes.
Right. So what do you think about this conversation about detoxification cleanses?
Most of the things that you do, and you have seen people do from caffeine enema, for example, I've seen. Sometimes they want to wash away everything in the colon. These are horrible, horrible things that people are doing to other people because it's all a myth. In fact, if you start to get rid of the bacteria in your colon, it takes time, almost a month to 3 months to build it back. You have a microbiome, and this is your life. You're dependent on these bacteria. In fact, if you change it too much, you're going to get diarrhea, and a horrible Clostridium and other kind of bacteria invade your mucosa, and you may die. So they are really risking people's lives by doing these things. These are horrible things. Our body has what is called homeostasis.
Right.
Homeostasis maintains our systems, whether it's our blood, whether it's our urine, whether it's kidney function. Unless you're sick, the homeostasis is disturbed.
It's disturbed,
Our
right.
body is built with the systems to maintain the homeostasis that is required for the best operation of your cells. So thinking about, I get rid of some toxic substances that they never define, that is in your colon or in your kidney, is just a myth. And it's just to make some people rich. And sometimes they come up with these ideas, unfortunately, to become rich. I have seen even a machine that they prescribe to put in bars so then they can get alkaline water, prescribed alkaline water.
Right,
for
it's
people.
everywhere. It's become quite
This is
popular.
New
this
shape,
is
bright, shiny
horrible
object.
to
Yeah.
humanity.
Again, it's one of those things that's a trend, but I just look at the positive side of it is that if it gets people to drink more water, at least that's a good takeaway from it.
Right.
Yeah, there you go.
Now, let's say another thing that has become very common. We go to the street and we see these juice bars.
Right.
Horrible. Horrible.
Right, because people
Listen,
don't realize that the amount of glucose that they're consuming from the juice, right, is going to spike the serum blood glucose, and insulin production is going to
to me,
match that.
to
right?
me, this is counterintuitive. You eat vegetables because you want to have the fiber. Now you take away the fiber and you just drink the juice. Why would you do that?
No, but there's still fiber in the juice. Right?
But it's,
Well,
it's
but
There's
it's-
obviously
soluble
it's
fiber
not
and
going-
there's
yeah, but
it's a
insoluble
lower
fiber.
level,
It's
right.
going-
lower percentage.
If you just take a lettuce
No,
and
but
eat it,
the thinking is, right? I could use a whole bunch of lettuce and kale, and it will come up into one glass of fluid that I can drink. I would never be able to sit in one place and eat and chew that amount of vegetables
well,
in a day.
they recommended.
I'm a big juicer.
Right,
So-
because the juice does contain fiber.
Yeah, but the recommended dose of fiber in our society, if you look at the science, how much they recommend, is about 25 gram of fiber, which we can easily eat one lettuce, which is not difficult, and we get it.
For the average person on the run,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
On
if
the
you're-
run, you're trying to make things that will fit the lifestyle
the ner-
which we're forced to live. Right?
So
If
getting
you-
getting some nourishment, you know,
Right.
I went to a juice bar. I went, you know, it's all vegetables, they're blending.
Right.
So putting that in my system, didn't have time for salad, but
You
you know,
don't have
that's
time
obviously more beneficial than going having a diet, you know, soda.
Right,
And
exactly. You're doing something, you know.
Something
it's
versus
not the
nothing.
best. Yeah,
I-
something
yeah.
versus
I
nothing.
guess for
You're a
those
pure,
people,
you're a purist.
Is
You
it
wanna-
I'm
purist,
going
right.
to tell you what I think.
I think
Yeah.
we're,
the best
I think
options,
I think
yeah.
they want to.
Right. Let's see the purist side of it, but then the realist, right?
Yeah.
We look at it from a real
Balance.
perspective. Right. We got to do these things in a day. I'd like to do
At least it
something
doesn't
positive
hurt
for
you.
my health. Yeah, and it doesn't hurt me.
It doesn't hurt you.
Right.
no.
And I can't sit and eat all this vegetable all day. What am I, a rabbit? So I'll drink a glass of something that's concentrated. right?
I think they want us to wrap it up. So let's go have a steak. What do you think?
Right. Now, talking about something that's causing hysteria amongst the population, what are your thoughts on this outbreak of coronavirus?
I think we have increased the hysteria instead of knowledge, giving people knowledge so they can decide for themselves.
Right.
You're making them scared. I think if you look at influenza
Right.
in 1906, I think it was, it killed 20 million people worldwide. Even now, in this 2019,
2019, what, 49?
16,000
No,
49
49
million, 49
right,
million
since
people got
2019
infected,
to now, right.
and out of that, almost 1% of the people died.
1,360 something, right?
Now, coronavirus is a little bit more pathogenic.
Right.
It may cause more mortality, but it's not going to really wipe off mankind.
Yeah.
People are really thinking that once it becomes epidemic or pandemic, and they want to coin it that way,
Right.
is that everywhere you go, you see people dying.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's what we are going to see. At this point, there are 100,000 people who have got infected, and these are what we know.
Right.
3,000 died. I
Which
think
is at 3%. Though.
Yeah, it's
That's
3%.
3% mortality rate.
Exactly.
So, as a disease, it's more fatal than influenza. However,
right.
the incidence of influenza is much, much, much larger than the incidence
Exactly.
of coronavirus. And the efforts should be targeted now at containment, at corralling it, so the incidence doesn't increase.
Right.
And the fear is that this is something that's unknown. As I said earlier,
Yes.
an unknown entity breeds fear because we
Yes.
don't know what it will do. With the influenza virus, we already know what it is. what its life cycle is, and how it tends to end. And we know those at risk. We can even predict pretty with much accuracy what strain of influenza virus is due to come next year and the year after. But because this is a de novo, brand new coronavirus that we don't know much about, and we're learning as we go its life cycle and the pathogenic traits that it would leave behind, that's what's causing so much fear.
Right, but I think the way that they have caused the hysteria, it's possible that a lot of things get damaged because of the hysteria. For example, I know that the Carnival cruise and other cruise lines have lost almost 50%. The airlines are losing. If people don't go out to dinner or don't go to supermarket anymore and order things from Amazon, then many supermarkets will
It's going to
suffer.
have a huge economic impact. Right?
Yeah,
It will
everybody's
have.
going to hibernate. Everybody's going to
Yeah.
have everything delivered to their
Exactly.
house,
Right.
and which again, there's that balance. As we talked about diet, there's balance on being safe, but also living your life.
Right.
There's
Now, you have to understand one thing.
Taking precautions,
Is that,
obviously.
you have to be knowledgeable what to do.
Yeah.
Now, if you are very careful, I would say don't go to places that are a lot of people, right? So if you are going to go to watch a basketball team,
I was going to go watch the Lakers play the Nets on Tuesday, so I'm not going anymore.
yeah, so they of course they also lose, but avoiding big crowds is
Right,
probably
it's number
something
one.
easy.
And
number
with
one.
any
Right.
viral illness
Right.
that is transmitted by droplet or
Exactly.
contact, surface
The
contact.
second
yeah.
thing we have to remember is that there are different kind of coronavirus, even in the United States,
There are four
and
types,
not all of them are as lethal.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, there are some that are as bad as a flu.
That will cause a subclinical infection, right?
Fortunately, children seem to be more resistant. And that means that we may have underestimated the number of cases because they may get it and they recover and
Right.
we will
And
never
we didn't know.
So I think the 100,000 that we see may be a true underestimation. What if it was
conservative.
1 million?
Right.
Then the ratio would be 3,000 per million. It's even less than flu.
Yeah.
So I think, unfortunately, the hysteria has caused people to
But-
panic and do things that maybe they shouldn't do.
But by the same token, children also get missed in the diagnosis of influenza.
Yes.
Right. So apples with apples.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, I would say that we know that probably the way that it's transmitted is either through your hand,
Right.
and it has been found in a stool. So you really have to wash your hand. Now, if you really, really want to be cautious, I know that there is no more mask and no more gloves. Gloves don't protect you because there is organism attached to it, so it's not going to protect you. But wearing a mask or not touching your face is really a simple thing.
Is that a
Everybody can do.
fecal oral transmission thing, touching your face?
Since it is in a stool, I
Right.
think it may. Yes.
Fecal oral. All right.
But it also through the droplets. Now you have to remember, when you sit across someone with 6 feet,
Right.
what the droplets can reach you.
Can reach
Well,
you.
somebody
So-
I heard this morning. I actually went to church. Good, bully for me. But the priest was saying the people with corona should be wearing the mask. They said if you're wearing a mask and you don't have it, you can still get in your eyes. And so they said the
Yeah.
masks are actually overblown.
Yeah, it's true. The
It's
mask-
not the total way of inhibiting transmission.
It's
Right.
not. It doesn't protect anyone. What the mask will do will prevent the transmission from an infected
exactly.
person.
They said the people who are infected should be
Right,
wearing
should
the
be wearing
masks
the mask, right.
more than anyone.
Because the way that when it's sneezing
Yeah.
and when you're talking, these droplets go at high speed.
Explosive.
Yeah, it's just like a
Explosive
bullet.
transmission.
And they
Right.
sit on you. And then if you touch yourself and put in your mucosa, in your nose, in your mouth, then you get it. But it doesn't mean it's 100% because you can get it by shaking somebody's hand.
Right.
I would say don't shake people's hand anymore
Right. Again.
until this is over.
Yeah.
And I think when the weather changes, hopefully in a month, we probably see a drop because these organisms
Is
don't...
that because we know from the life cycle of other viral infections that there tends to be a decrease in viral infections as the weather gets warmer.
Humidity.
Is it humidity,
Humidity.
temperature, or the fact that ventilation improves?
Well,
That
humidity.
people open windows.
I
more?
know that humidity, they don't like it, so it will be much less transmitted.
All right, there have been reports that people in Africa have not been seen to
They
be
have
susceptible
tolerance, yes.
to have some kind of tolerance or immunity to
Yes,
the coronavirus, despite the fact that they have poor public health facilities and there's overcrowding that
Yes.
you might think would tend to transmit this disease easily. Do you think that this is due to the environmental humidity or temperature, or is it?
Could be Africa.
an
It's very
immune-
hot,
Yeah.
but I don't know whether it's humid. But I think it may have also something to do with the African population may have immune tolerance to this disease. So, like children, I don't know why children
Have-
don't get as
right.
much as bad as the other. Or, for example, if you have a sickness, underlying disease, you're susceptible more, you die more often as a result of this infection. So obviously, immune system plays a great role.
I would agree with you as a pediatrician. I know that with children, the resistance would be linked to the thymus. Right?
Yes.
Yeah,
They have a big thymus,
They have a
yes.
big thymus, and as they grow, it tends to atrophy
Shrink,
and to shrink. So
It
probably
atrophies with time.
right, and the thymus is the seat of production of most
T
of
cells.
the T cells.
Yes.
Right, right. So maybe there's something to look at. But I believe, like with current technology and what we have available, and with artificial intelligence married to scientific exploration in different fields now, I think this can be contained pretty quickly.
Yeah,
than
I
previous
think
pandemics.
fortunately
Right.
there are different kind of species of this coronavirus. One of them is very mild.
Right.
It's just like flu or even less than flu. I think we don't know because of the hysteria. We think this is the end. No. What if that virus is more contagious? So it will be spread among the population. It will cause minor cold-like symptoms,
And then it will induce
eventually these
immunity.
people may become immune
Yeah,
to the other
yeah.
worst
Right.
scenario,
Which is
The
like
oth-
vaccination.
exactly. Now the vaccines, I
Right.
think FDA has relaxed the rules, so then maybe the vaccine can come faster to the market. It will take a year, they said,
Mm-hmm.
but I think the treatment, it's going to be faster,
It's gonna
and
be
we are
faster.
going to look at, hopefully in a month or 2 months, maybe we will have, Israelis have one, and there is an American company that has come up with one that is entering clinical trials. So I really believe that people should not panic as they
And
have.
with the use of artificial intelligence, they just use artificial intelligence to go through an algorithm of medications now to find out certain compounds to mix that were anti-cancer, and it worked. And for the first time, they were able to go from conception to production of an anti-cancer medication in less than 4 months using AI.
Right.
I
Now,
think
where was that 2 years ago? Because we didn't have that AI technology.
we didn't
How-
have that 2 years ago.
But how long would that? Is for you said you just compressed it to 4 months.
From conception to production, you're talking at least 10 years.
So from 10 years to 4 months.
Right.
Incredible. Wow.
So AI,
Wow.
right? It can go through all the compounds, right, that are available that work against this particular
Right.
bacteria, and join them together, and then give you a product, and you just apply it.
Wow.
They are
So-
already doing this for many diseases. Artificial intelligence checks an array of drugs that are available, and then they use it, and then you get one that hits,
Right.
and then they try it, and it works, then it comes to the market.
That's
So-
very exciting, because you're talking about the end of antibiotic resistance as we know it.
Yes.
You're talking about efficacy without side effects.
Yes.
Right. You're talking about shorter duration of treatments because your target is being hit right away, and you're also talking about reduction in cost.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
very exciting.
I think as we go forward, the artificial intelligence will be so significant, play a significant role in identification of diseases
Right.
and their treatment strategies, because unfortunately, as a human being, our mind is not as advanced to incorporate so many different principles. For example, I think Watson in 1 minute can read and memorize 200,000 papers, whereas I can maybe at the most I do 10, 20 papers a day. So there is no comparison between artificial intelligence and human mind.
There was also another study that looked at diagnosis of pathology slides by pathologists versus artificial intelligence, and the pathologists were correct like 90% of the time, and AI was correct 99.3% of the time. Same thing.
I'm
yeah,
a pathologist.
I know. I'm
And,
just saying, right. Same thing went for radiologists reading scans and reading X-rays and MRIs. They're pretty good at it, but apparently AI can do
Can
it
do
quicker,
better.
faster, and cheaper.
I remember when I was a resident in 1980s, my chairman, Dr. Leopold Koss in Montefiore Medical Center, he had a program called TICUS. And the program intended to identify cancer cells by the machine instead of pathologists. Because pathologists, even to this day, they are the ones who diagnose cancers and other diseases under the microscope. And he knew, and he was adamant that ultimately the machines will be able to replace pathologists. In the year 1999, a new technique, you may have heard about this, is called microarray came, that allowed sequencing large number of sequences. And what happened is I foresaw that what Dr. Leopold Koss was saying is going to be true, and we are going to replace pathologists. In one of our rounds on a Monday morning, I said that. I said that I believe in 10 to 20 years, pathologists will be replaced. The chairman was furious, and he said, it will never happen. You cannot say this. This is just a byproduct and an ancillary to what we are as a pathologist. He got really thought that I'm disrespecting his science, but I think it will be undoubtful that radiology will be replaced, pathologists will replace, diagnosis will be replacing clinicians, pediatricians, and all these.
Well, surgeons are being replaced now.
Surgeons, definitely.
We have the Da Vinci robot, which does a lot
Absolutely.
of stuff that we.
Yeah, I think by 2030, we are talking about 60 million Americans lose their jobs.
We
because of
shouldn't just
artificial
look at it
intelligence.
from that negative perspective.
No, we will
because
talk about the positive
the positive aspect,
yes.
because now they're doing surgeries remotely.
Yes. Yeah.
So it allows a surgeon here to perform surgery
Something in Africa.
In Africa, right?
Exactly.
Which is a huge plus.
Yes, but again, if you go through the hysteria talking about the artificial intelligence and Armageddon for the mankind is wrong attitude. Next time we will talk that discussion about artificial intelligence and where we are
going. Give
going.
us 30 seconds on that subject to give it the old carrot. So people will tune in next time. Go ahead, give us 30 seconds.
It's my belief that artificial intelligence, the artificial general intelligence, will probably be produced by 2025 to 2030. Some people say 2029 is artificial general intelligence. I put it forward a little bit. And then I believe the super intelligent AI will emerge in about 2029 to 2035, whereas Kurzweil says it's 2045. I think it's earlier. Now,
That's enough.
There is a fear. There is a fear of singularity, according to Kurzweil. We don't know what happens after artificial intelligence emerges, but I know that's a fallacy. Is not correct, and we are going
You think there's definitely a positive for humanity?
Yeah, the correct
versus the Terminator scenario.
Yes, it's not going to be Terminator scenario under any circumstances, and I'm going to use science to defeat the idea that artificial intelligence is the end of the mankind.
Well, that's more Hollywood than science.
Right.
What we're here about on this program is science-based thinking.
Yes.
Right. So we're going to flesh that out on the subsequent episode. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your time. Thank you too, John. All right. What are your thoughts on the coronavirus and the hysteria amongst
I
the
think
population?
it's overblown and it's unfortunate. But there's an issue out there, but and people were being overly cautious. And, I haven't heard a lot of statistics about the age of people who are dying. versus like you're talking about the young. Obviously, the young have a better immune system, but you know, hopefully this will be taken care of quickly. But whether it be the humidity, weather, whatever, but I think it'll be short-lived. I think science now, with what technology is available, will be able to conquer this fairly quickly.
The economic impact is going to be huge. I mean,
Yes.
people are fighting at Costco over tissue paper and water.
Yeah.
And I think if it's come to that level where you have to stockpile everything, then we're all done, aren't we?
Yeah. Yes. Correct.
Now,
Correct.
I want to tell whoever listens to our first broadcast is that this is going to be an enticing and exciting series of discussions. We're going to talk about from Big Bang to quantum physics to all the way to artificial intelligence and the future of mankind. And I encourage everybody who listens for the first time to continue to listen to us, because we are going to give you a completely different perspective about the past, the present, and the
In the
future.
And also, if you're out there listening, we're open to suggestions as to discuss what you want to hear about. What
Yeah. We want a dialogue.
you want to dialogue.
Yeah, you have to perhaps implement an idea that perhaps they can phone
They can
to
they
us.
can
Yeah.
call in,
Yeah.
or they
So you
can
can provide the
reach
phone.
us through any one
Social
of
media.
social media and send in questions, and we can toss around ideas and answer questions here.
Right.
That's what we're here to do. And we're going to be having guests on the show. This is our first recording. We're going to have guests from different walks of life and from different disciplines that will be like experts in their own fields and who are willing to sit around the table and discuss with scientists
Yeah.
their
also,
ideas.
And also, if you have a disagreement, okay, bring that to the fore. Let's discuss. Your ideas, your thoughts, your science versus maybe what something was brought up here. So this is an ongoing discussion, and nobody's right, nobody's wrong, but science will prove it.
Yeah, and I think time will tell,
Yeah.
Who's right
because
and who's
the
yeah.
trajectory of science is unpredictable. But if you are basing the past on predicting the future, it may not really work. You really have to open your horizon a little bit to be able to forecast the future.